Welcome to the Content Amplified podcast, brought to you by Masset. Our goal is to help you get more from your marketing content. Each episode is a 10 to 15 minute interview with industry experts that share amazing insights to help you squeeze as much juice from your content as you possibly can. Here's today's interview.
Welcome back to another episode of Content Amplified. Today I'm joined by Amber. Amber, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for taking the time. Amber, before we dive into the subject, I'd love to hear a little bit more about yourself. How did you get into marketing? What do you love about content? Just kind of setting the stage for the discussion.
I got into marketing from doing freelance, and I'll be totally honest that when I was first starting out in freelance, I was a little desperate for gigs. So I did one of those things where you write essays for people for their college finals. I'm not super proud of that, but I will always be honest about it. But then eventually I started working with a few agencies and then ended up at an agency. And from there went in-house in SaaS. And it's been a cool journey. And I think my favorite thing about content right now is just how different and varied it is. So I think more and more people are having the conversation about content, not just being a blog post. And as someone who mostly started out on social media as a social media manager, I feel very validated by being part of the content world as well, and not just social.
I love that. I love that. And I love how you talked about the variety of marketing. It's one of my favorite things. I recently had this college student walk up to me randomly and be like, "Hey, you look like you're in marketing," because I was at a marketing event, and she's like, what does your day-to-day look like?" And I was like, well, that's one of the hardest questions to answer for marketing, because it depends on what you do or what part you go into and where you work for. And even week to week, it can be so different to see what you do. So if you like to do a lot of different things, marketing is a great place to be. That is something that I think is so unique and fun about marketing, that you get such a cool breadth of experience. Today, we're going to dive into something that I'm really excited to learn about from Amber, and that is how to really run and why to run an employee advocacy program. Amber, when you're looking at these programs, first of all, what is an advocacy program? What does that look like in a business?
So for some context, right now I work in B2B SaaS at a Series A startup. So we're fairly small. And when I started, we were maybe 20 people, and we've now scaled to 60 people. So we started looking at employee advocacy as a way for us to have an outsized impact on social, where our traditional, say on LinkedIn, our traditional company page only had 2,000 followers, would only get us so many impressions. Once we could kind of outsource the job of social to other people to talk about the things that they're passionate about in their own authentic voice, we were able to grow our impact pretty easily compared to if I were just to keep grinding, posting day by day by day and not getting seen. So that's kind of the why, is it lets you put more out into the world. You're amplifying. It's kind of the cheat code, I think, for amplifying on social, at least right now. Yeah, that was our approach.
I love it. And as more and more businesses and the way people interact with those businesses turns to, I've got to trust, I got to believe in their cause, I have to have a relationship with the business, it seems like a really cool way for them to connect with at least someone from the business and say, hey, I align with them. And if they work there, it means the business must embody some of these values I have. How does the unique brand of each individual, how do you kind of collectively help it paint a picture of the overall company itself through all of these different endpoints through the employees?
Yeah, it's kind of tough. And one of the first things that I decided, and we kind of decided together, was that I would never be the person who would tell someone what to post and that they had to post. I think that when people hear employee advocacy programs, they might think of that old school way of here's a blog post, share it with this copy. And I decided I would never wanted to do that, because then that would affect the impact. We want the impact to be authentic voices speaking about things that they know, and then people coming into your ecosystem because of it. So from the jump, a lot of it was about training our employees on what personal branding is and how to do it, and then letting them know that the benefit is for both of us, but especially for you. Like the benefit should be framed in how it can advance your career and your goals. So if your goal as an AE is to build more pipeline, this is a way to do it. And let's figure out how to do it together. Whether you talk about user gens, that's my company, whether you talk about user gens, whether you're like sharing our blog posts or not, this is supposed to help you. And then we get like a kickback from it.
I love that. That's so cool. So, how do you typically go around finding the value that they're going to get? And how do you kind of articulate that? Do you go role by role, department by department? Like, how do you like roll that out company wide?
Yeah. When we were smaller, it was a little bit easier. And then it came down to like operationalizing it to make sure that we're continuing this culture, I guess, of employee advocacy, of being advocates for your company. So it started out when we were smaller. We were all kind of like, rah, 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 we're going to do this. I built a social media policy. I think a lot of people want that. They want to be secure in knowing what they are and are not allowed to post. So even though I was like, I'm not going to tell you what to post, people still asked me what they were allowed to post. And I was like, here you go. Like, now be free because I have it in writing for you. And then built like a very initial training for everyone and smaller group trainings that for the people who were bought in, like they were bought in then to personal branding. So here's how we do it from A to Z, get started, and then providing one-on-one coaching with them on writing because people tend to be pretty insecure about putting themselves out there. So that was a very important part of just kind of building this culture of doing this. And then I realized as we were growing that I had to continue that by providing training for any time someone new came in. I was like, you're going to go through this training. I'm sorry if it's boring, but if it sparks something in you, then you can do this additional training, or like you can work one-on-one with me. And yeah, let's just get this going. So I've tried a few different programs of like raffles and gift cards, and they've worked okay. But I think the people who really get it and who really want to invest in their personal brand, they don't need that stuff to motivate them. They have this like deep internal motivation.
I think that's really cool. A couple of things come to mind as you're saying that. The one of the questions I have is how are you tracking it? You know, how do you measure the impact when it's based off of so many different profiles and so many different endpoints? How do you kind of look at the success of what you're doing?
This is the big challenge. This is a huge challenge. We don't do it. It's not that we don't do it. It's just that we don't do it in a very systematic way because you kind of need tools for that, like with people connecting their accounts. And then they typically have to post from within that platform to make it count, which makes it very difficult because our goal, first and foremost, is to get people to start posting on LinkedIn. So if I start putting bumpers on it, I'm like, oh, you can only do it from this platform. It makes it a lot more difficult. But we have been using this measurement of like, do we hear people say some version of we see you everywhere? It's very like, ephemeral, but are we seeing mentions in our demo request where people are like, oh, I saw your post? Have people share screenshots when they get a DM that's like, oh man, I loved your post. Now I'm telling my boss about it. So we're kind of having to do it that way. It's very qualitative and not quantitative. And I think there is space for it to be qualitative, but I kind of don't want to like remove the heart and spirit of it by forcing them in this box that is measurable in that kind of way, which might not be the right approach. Like I'm open to people telling me you're not doing it the right way.
I love the organic nature of it, though. I think that makes perfect sense to say, hey, you're perfectly allowed to post how and where you see fit and match your own brand and, you know, share us the success of what's going on. And I think that's a cool opportunity. It sounds like you're already sharing those screenshots with the company and with other people to really kind of improve it and get them to go. Have you seen people like on their own get competitive with this? Like I could see certain departments being like, all right, I'm going to go out there and get more likes than you. And like, have you seen some of that stuff start to creep up organically on its own?
I wish that we saw it more. My company is so great where everyone has zero ego. And I'm like, I wish you guys would have more ego so that we could like really go after it. I have seen our CEO get competitive with our director of sales. And I'm like, I need more of that because I think that one of the things that made our program successful from the jump is that we had buy-in from the executive team and they were posting as well. And I'm happy if the CEO is competitive with employees because that means that he is going to be more motivated to post. So, like some of that competition, but I wish that they were more egotistic so that they did have more of that competitive drive.
I love it. It sounds like you just said like you have the CEO and the executives bought in and it's become a culture piece. Have you had to do like much on the culture side to really sustain this feeling of, hey, this is something that we just do here. We post and we talk about it. We're open about our company. We're excited about who we are. How have you like purposely tried to drive the culture to make that happen?
Yeah, I think there's like a few things that we've done, but the biggest thing is just kind of pointing out the successes that have come from it. So the screenshots of where they've seen us, the fact that when we're hiring, we get a lot of like DMs that are like, oh, I absolutely, you've been on my want to work there list forever because I see you guys just posting all the time. It seems so great. Just continuing to share those stories has really helped, but you do have to keep banging the drum of like, this is something that's good for you and for us over and over again because people have like content's my full-time job, but it's not their full-time job. So I just have to keep gently reminding people that when done right, this can make your job easier. It can make you more successful. But just like finding that time, I know can be really difficult. So approaching it with empathy has always been my way. Like I'm a coach, like I'm more of a coach
Yeah,
for like helping you post more, post about whatever gets you fired up, but I'm not a dictator.
I love that. So I had an interesting experience. This was probably about 6 years ago. I was at a fast growing company and they had just a Christmas party and they went to town on the presents. Like I think everyone got $5,000 worth of stuff in the company and it was insane. And what was interesting is the number of social media posts about it, the number of like people randomly talking about it. I think my wife heard people talking about it in a grocery store the next day and things like that. So there are some like interesting things you can do as a company that like are naturally more post worthy. Have you like purposely tried to coach, the CEO and things like that to say, hey, here are some things we could do that would get people posting? Or have you seen companies even at least do a good job of creating moments where like, yeah, I bet people will post about this and talk about it and kind of help here?
I think like what we're seeing now is a lot of influencer marketing becoming more popular in B2B. And I think the really smart companies are making their own employees influencers within their company. So whether they're activating them by really cool swag or offering content houses or having events, I think that that's like a really smart way to go. And that's ultimately what employee advocacy is just helping your people become influencers and advocates for your company just in their own way. So events probably is one of the best ways. Something that I do with my CEO though is we found that you can kind of borrow someone else's audience by podcast. So it was a big push, especially last year, to get him on podcast because the mentions of his name were all over the place. At least our company had like 60 or something podcast appearances last year. So you're able to just kind of be everywhere and then have those mentions. And then it kind of forces the person who was on that podcast to talk about it as well, you know? So it's a little way that we game the system.
That's cool. I love that. Yeah, leveraging other people's networks. And those people are happy to do it too because they're getting the value out of it. And it's that far-reaching network effect. So I love that. Well, as promised, these episodes go by quick. They're super quick, but thank you. I have a lot to think about with these programs. There's a lot of interesting things to do and to be done. If anyone wants to continue the conversation, Amber, and reach out and connect with you or see what you're doing currently, how do they reach out and connect with you?
Yeah, so I'm always on LinkedIn. Amber A. Rhodes is my tag. And I have a brand new website, amberroads.co. If anyone just wants to check it out, you can email me from there.
Very cool. I love it. Well, again, Amber, thank you so much for the insights and your time today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Content Amplified podcast. Please subscribe and leave us a review. And for additional ways to get more out of your content, visit our website at getmasset.com. That's getmasset.com. And tune in next time to the Content Amplified podcast.